A very warm welcome to everyone. How are you guys doing? Tonight in the house, we have Emma Holling and Jamie Robb. Rob, how are you doing, Emma and Jamie?
Doing all right. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Awesome. Well, if you're new here on Space Tour Live, thank you so much for tuning in. We've been doing these Thursday night talks since back in April, and we've been bringing you space experts, engineers, different people from the industry talking about what they do with space. And tonight's an extra special one because it's actually the youngest speakers we have on our talk tonight. We've actually got two A-level students in the UK, Emma and Jamie. And I see we've got an audience in already, so thank you for joining us. If you guys have any questions throughout our talk, just let us know if you're joining us on YouTube or Facebook. And Emma and Jamie will be happy to kind of answer your questions. Well, let's just have a little bit of an introduction then, Jamie and Emma, to tell the audience what you guys do.
Yeah, so I'm Jamie Robb. That's a picture of me in South Africa a couple of years ago. As Laksh said, I'm an A-level student. I'm doing maths, physics, and further maths at A-level. And I'm looking to a career in the space sector, either through computer science or aerospace engineering. So, yeah, as well as school and interest in space, I also play a bit of rugby. So I went to South Africa. That's me with a lion. And yeah, pretty much that's the basics of me. I guess we'll go more details as we keep going. That's another picture from South Africa. That's Table Mountain, where we played under, which was pretty cool.
Awesome. What about you, Emma?
So a bit about me. My interests have fluctuated all over the place for the last couple of years, but I've settled on space, which was something I loved from when I was younger. This is a photo of me meeting Michael Foale, who was one of the first British astronauts. And, it was this moment that kind of changed my mind completely. I went from politics to space. So, yeah, he's the reason I'm here now, in a way.
That's great. Well, if you're joining us on Facebook or YouTube, please do hit that thumbs up button if you're already enjoying this talk. Let us know if you have any questions. And a little bit of a context into what we do here on Space Tour Live is try to bring you experts from the space industry where we talk about how space impacts our lives, what people in different industries in the space sector do to help the industry. And our initiative on Space Tour really has been to kind of create this digital community ever since kind of lockdown began. And that's how our YouTube channel started. And one of the most important things to us has been trying to involve young people. And it is truly amazing. Finally, we have two young, I wouldn't be afraid to call you guys young brand ambassadors of the space industry because you guys have done so much, in my opinion, at such a young age. And we're going to be talking about all of that shortly. But I guess one of the things that kicked it off really was Aerospace for All, a podcast which you guys, I believe, started at the start of lockdown.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so this was something Jamie started up at the start, and I joined him about a couple of months in. And it was just a site that was trying to explain to young people how to get into the space sector, because Jamie and I realized there was very little information out there for people who are sort of 16, 17, making those decisions for their future about where they want to go to university, if they want to do an apprenticeship. Just there wasn't much out there about space, and we wanted to change that. So we started the podcast, we got articles written from university students, just trying to advertise the space industry and show people what was out there and how they could get involved.
Yeah, what a lot of people don't actually know as well is that Aerospace for All originally started with me because there were no university open days. I thought, how am I going to find out about which course do I want to do at university and which university I even want to go to? So it originally started out with me actually just reaching out to a couple of people at uni and saying, what's your course been like and what's your university been like in general? And then I take that hour's conversation, write it up as an article, put that on the website. It started as something that Emma doesn't even know. Before Aerospace for All, it was called Aero Student. That kind of changed because of a few domain name issues. Changed to Aerospace for All. But yeah, it kind of started from that, and then it kind of just changed and moved on from there.
And what kind of people did you have on your podcast then?
Initially it was students, and then we kind of just thought, I got really interested in space. So it was initially for me, it was space and like aeronautical stuff. And then I narrowed down onto space. So it ended up literally just being cool people from space. So we had a couple of people that had founded some cool companies doing cool stuff. A couple of people that had worked for companies like SpaceX. Just a load of different people from a fairly wide range of backgrounds as well. Just trying to represent the space sector and really show young people what it's like to work in it.
Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, I could never have thought to have started a podcast when I was 17, 18. And how many episodes did you guys end up doing?
Like
12-ish.
Well, 12. Yeah, we've parked Aerospace for All at the moment.
Yeah.
And we're about to start a new podcast with the experience we gained from Aerospace for All, which hopefully will run for a bit longer, and it's got a slightly different structure from the old one.
Cool. Yeah, hold that thought for a second, because we're going to go into a conversation about what stuff you're doing now with the Scottish-based Leadership Council. But just a bit more about the podcast. Like, what was the feedback like starting a podcast at a young age, and like kind of where did the confidence come from to do that? Because it is, I mean, it's hard going live in front of people. Because effectively you're kind of putting yourself out there, isn't it? Yeah. It's like writing a blog, or I don't know, starting a YouTube channel. You're effectively putting yourself out there for the good feedback, the bad feedback. People who are experts might be listening in to you and have something to say about it. How did you go about that?
Yeah, I guess I'll take this one. So one thing initially when I started out doing the podcast and the whole article sort of stuff, I was doing them over the phone, and I was holding the phone in my hand and writing notes down as I was going along. And I remember the first time I did it over Zoom, I was actually really scared, because it's another completely different thing when the person can see you that you're talking to. You have to worry about like how you're sat there, how you look, and like what's behind you and all that kind of stuff. So it's a completely different ballpark when people are looking at you. But once you've done it once, like you don't have to record anything. You just need to start like reaching out to people. And I was reaching out to people that were a few years older than me, and then getting introduced by other people. And then it just got to the point where people were like, they appreciated that somebody's enthusiastic about what they do. And some people are keen to share their experiences and stuff. So if you just show that you're interested in what they've done, people are more than happy to talk to you and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, go on.
So on the front of like reception and stuff, I was having some phone calls with people, and one of them was with the chief of staff at Reaction Engines, which was a company I'd looked at and gone, whoa, it's amazing. I couldn't believe I was having this phone call. And at the end of it, she said, I've listened to your podcast. I really enjoyed the episode with the woman from NASA. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, this is actually getting out there, and there are people I admire listening to it. So that was quite an amazing experience.
Yeah, one other thing I'd add to that is something that I didn't really realize until a few months ago, that I'm actually giving credit to a lot of my confidence of like getting on calls like this and getting on calls with people, is I worked in a fish and chip shop for a year. And on a Friday night when we were like running around like crazy, it was my job to pick up the phone and take phone orders. And I'd have people like screaming at me down the phone. And stuff. And I got to the point where I could just deal with it. And initially my boss would give me the phone and I'd be scared to pick it up in case I messed something up. But you just get to the point where it just becomes natural because you've just been exposed to it. So that was actually a really good experience for me and really confidence building, and like standing on a till in a really, really loud room before COVID, obviously, with like loads of people in there not shouting, but like trying to be heard and make sure that you're hearing people and understanding what they've said, because you don't want to give them a haddock when they ordered a cod, that kind of thing. It's like, it actually built me, it gave me a lot of experience in terms of speaking to people. And I actually give a lot of credit to this kind of stuff, for this kind of stuff. It was a really, really good experience.
Yeah, because you kind of learned through going through that high pressure environment, didn't you? And then it helps you in all your communication skills, doesn't it?
Yeah. And it's great. Like crowd management when you've got angry people because they haven't had their food because something's not wrong. And you learn how to manage people. It's good. Yeah.
That's great. I think just on a point, you mentioned, Emma, about speaking to someone very high up at Reaction Engines. And when something I heard a long time ago was you just have to really improve your people skills, because when you think of like big companies, whether it's NASA, Reaction Engines, Oxford Space Systems, or any other large company, especially if we're talking about the space sector or the space industry here in the UK, you think of these really million-dollar companies, but effectively it's just people who run them. So if you're good with people, you're going to be good speaking to those companies. So hats off to you guys for putting yourself out there.
It's something we really want to try and teach other people that are our age, because there is a hesitation to reach out, because they do look at these companies and go, whoa, these people are, they could be employing me in the future. I don't want to make a bad impression when I'm 16. And it's just saying to them, no, you won't make a bad impression. They'll be, they will admire you for reaching out in the first place. And that you're willing to talk shows that you'll be a good employee in the future. If you do end up working for them, odds on you don't. But if that does happen, it's not a bad thing that you spoke to them when you were our age.
Yeah. That's great. Awesome. Well, let's go on to, we briefly mentioned the Scottish-based Leadership Council, the SSLC, and you mentioned that Aerospace for All, the podcast, is you've parked it a little bit for now, and that idea is now developed into something new.
Yeah. I guess I'll explain this. So the Scottish Space Leadership Council has been set up for a couple of years, and it's obviously based up in Scotland. It's basically bringing together a load of the industry from Scotland and representing it to the government and to big players like the UK Space Agency and that sort of thing. So you've got all this SME landscape in Scotland of loads and loads of smaller companies who don't necessarily have the strength to actually play for themselves when it comes to like talking to the big players. So the SSLC is kind of representing all of these smaller companies, basically as a big council with a couple of people from a lot of these different companies. And then whenever there's something that they kind of need to work on, they'll all kind of sort of just team up and do that. So one of the big things is the UK Spaceport Alliance, which was set up towards the end of last year. That's actually part of the Scottish Space Leadership Council. So they've set up the UK Spaceport Alliance, which is obviously quite a big thing. But amongst a few other working groups, something that they really wanted to work on was the innovation and the diversity in the UK space sector. So there was a new working group set up, which is what Emma and I are part of, which we'll talk about in a couple of minutes. And that's kind of where we're working and trying to make our bit of difference.
That's great. I think what SSLC are doing is amazing, and it just sits so well with what we believe here at Space Store, is that it's trying to improve the diversity within space, and not only trying to improve it, it's just trying to tell people that, look, there are careers in the space industry, regardless of what your background is, regardless of whether as me and Emma were speaking about this offline earlier, that you don't have to just be an engineer to be part of the space industry. You can have interest in law. You can have interest in project management. You can have any interest, different subjects. Doesn't matter. You can still be part of the space industry. So I think what the Scottish Space Leadership Council are doing is actually amazing. So it's great that Aerospace for All is kind of heading into that direction now. And one thing that I was just thinking of is, if you hadn't started Aerospace for All and made that first kind of went past that first hurdle of doing something, it would never have become this now.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Emma, do you want to talk about that?
No, I mean it is crazy. I look back and to think I was hesitant about joining up with Jamie. It seems so silly now, because all these opportunities, like speaking tonight, which is amazing. Yeah. Thank you again, by the way. They wouldn't have happened if I hadn't joined up with Aerospace for All. So, you're right there. Yeah,
and it gave us a load of other skills as well, in terms of we incorporated Aerospace for All, because there was a time where we were like, we're gonna make this into a proper business where it's actually going to generate some sort of revenue, because obviously we were putting quite a lot of time into it, and we both had part-time jobs, and we were both students. So we were like, we're putting so much time into this, we might as well see if we can make it generate some revenue. In the end, we did loads of things to try and make that happen, and it didn't work. So we decided that we're going to kind of stop that, but we incorporated it. We kind of had to go through that whole process. We learned how to do all of that. We learned sort of communication and delegation skills. It's a lot of skills that we're gonna be find useful going into the future.
Definitely.
Anybody can start something up like that. Like, you don't need anything to begin and start it. It's so everything is free now because you can just do it online. So there's no reason for anybody not to.
As you said.
Oh, sorry. Forgive me. You go.
Go on, Emma.
No, everything is free. Jamie's right. I mean, you talk about recording on your phone, Jamie, with the podcast at the beginning, you didn't have to buy a mic. Anyone can do anything as long as they have access to the internet and some decent skills talking to people. It's so easy to get going these days, and there's no reason not to.
Exactly, yeah. We've actually got a question in from our audience. Lynn, Kia, hi Lynn, thank you for tuning in. And the question is, what are you guys doing for A-level?
So I'm taking further maths, geography and physics, and I'm in year 12.
For me, right, so I'm in year 13, and I'm doing maths, further maths and physics. But originally, back at the start of year 12, I was doing maths, physics, DT and geology. And I went to an open day right at the very start of year 12, which my mum made me go to. And I realized that doing geology, although geology is a really cool subject and I actually find it really interesting, it just didn't align with what I wanted to do. So literally the first weekend of year 12, I swapped geology to further maths. And then I sort of halfway through year 12, I was like, I'm doing DT. It's so much work. And I'm not really enjoying it that much. So I got rid of DT, which was a really good thing, because if I didn't, then during lockdown, I wouldn't have had the time to do aerospace for all and all that kind of stuff. So in a way, I'm as much as I did enjoy some aspects of it, I'm really glad that I stopped doing it, because it opened up all these other opportunities.
Yeah, a follow-on to that is like, what are you? I know, Jamie, you said you want to do either aerospace or computer science at university. What about you, Emma?
So right now I'm looking at doing a physics degree. I'd like to get an integrated master's in the UK, and then jet off to America to go and do a space studies master's. Partially because I don't know exactly what I want to do in the space sector. Jamie knows he wants to go into computer science and looking at AI perhaps. I am passionate about a huge variety of different areas, and that is one of the joys of the space industry. Is if I want to go study law, I can make it applicable to the space sector. So my hope is that after my physics degree, if I discover that maybe I don't want to go into a physics related job, I can go and do that master's course and transfer my skills into management or into engineering, whatever takes my fancy.
Wow. Okay, that's really good, and it just goes to show that you don't need to have it figured out.
Yeah.
Even when you're studying A level. So if you're listening and you're doing A level right now and you want to get involved in the space industry, you don't need to know that you're going to work in chemical propulsion, for example, or you're going to work in spacecraft design. Just have a general interest, and that's enough. Coming back to a quick, go on. Sorry.
On that point, I was saying to Emma the other day, I remembered on that open day I was talking about, I was at that point interested in like civil engineering, and that's why I was doing geology and all that sort of stuff. And I literally it was at Bristol University, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh, aerospace engineering sounds cool. And then after that, I literally changed my A level because I thought aerospace engineering sounds cool, and now this is kind of like where I am because of it. So if there was nothing else to it other than that sounds cool, and that's kind of why I'm here now. So. You don't have to have like a really good reason for doing it. You don't have to have liked rockets since you were 5, as I said earlier. You just kind of have to have some sort of interest in it.
Yeah, exactly. Just on another note, a really interesting point, if you're listening, we were just speaking about Aerospace for All, which is a podcast Jamie and Emma started when lockdown began. And I think it was only a few days ago or last week when it was actually voted in the top 30. So hear me out. The top 30 best aerospace podcasts in the world, and it was ranked at 15th.
We'll take that.
I've actually got a little screenshot to show you guys that we're not making this up.
Yeah. I just got an email last week and I was pretty surprised.
Yeah.
Wow. And would anyone believe it was started by a couple of A-level students in the UK who were interested in space and aerospace?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. And when you look at some of the other ones on there, they're like corporation podcasts, like where you've got a massive multi-billion dollar company that's their podcast, and they're sort of just dotted around where our one is. So it was pretty cool to get that email.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Lots of two teenagers in England who don't quite know what they're doing, but are giving it their best shot.
Yeah, but hey, you're doing something, and you're raising a voice about the space industry, and you're getting recognized for it.
Yeah, cheers. What have we got up next?
Awesome. Well, we'll speak about that in a little bit. But let's talk about New Voices in Space, and what is that initiative?
Emma?
So New Voices is part of the Scottish Space Leadership Council, which is aiming to understand, sort of, as Jamie said earlier, bring the space industry together in the UK. And the New Voices part of that is improving diversity. Everyone's heard the cliche that everyone in the space sector is an old white guy. And it's trying to change that and show that anyone from any background, socioeconomic status doesn't matter. Your color doesn't matter. Nothing matters. As long as you're passionate about the space sector. That's what New Voices is trying to promote. And we're doing this through outreach. Well, we will be doing this shortly through outreach in schools, hosting a podcast. The Aerospace for All podcast is becoming the New Voices one. Later this month, we'll be publishing one about the Mars rover landing. We're very excited to get that out there. So, it's just similar to what we were doing with Aerospace for All, but under a bigger sort of umbrella. It's going to hopefully have a much bigger reach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the other big part of what New Voices is trying to do is that it's trying to push as well as diversity. It's trying to push innovation in the UK space sector. So at the minute, what we've got is we've got good access to orbit around Earth. And that's improving. And over the next few years, that's going to get to the point where we've just got that solidified. But what we're trying to do with New Voices is find out that, right, when these people who are in their teens or in their maybe even early 20s are like properly in the space sector in sort of 10, 20 years time, we're going to have access to orbit sorted. So what do you want to do from there? And if you want to be doing something in 10 years time, we've got to start it now so that it's kind of set up for us in 10 years time. So what we're doing with New Voices is trying to find out from the people who will be there in 10 years time, what do you want us to have ready for the time you get there? So we want it to be, we basically want to give the young new like people coming into the space sector a way to communicate with the sector and with the big players in it so that we can actually make some sort of difference.
That's a great initiative. And what kind of, I assume it's relatively new, it's a new initiative, and how do you see it growing through the UK? Like how can students get involved?
Right. So initially it's based in Scotland because it's part of the Scottish Space Leadership Council. But despite the name, it kind of acts over the whole of the UK. Like there's people from the whole of the UK involved in it. So we've got some stuff that we'll be rolling out this summer, which I'm not actually sure if we're allowed to talk about.
That's fine.
There'll be something rolling out in Scotland this summer, which will be a direct way for young people to get involved in the sector. Basically, where they can actually make a contribution, which should reach some high-level people. So their ideas will be heard by people who can actually do something with that idea. Is the idea, is the thinking behind it. So we're using Scotland as a testing ground because it's like a smaller area. And after that, we're going to take whatever we're doing in Scotland, which I can't describe too much, and put it to the whole of the UK. And basically just iterate on that and give young people a platform to reach the big players.
Yeah, well, I know you said we can't speak about it much because it's not officially launched, but come summer of 2021, I'm sure on Space Store we'll be shouting about it. So
we hope
we'll make sure the audience hear it.
Yeah, no, it's interesting.
question coming in from Kathy Bowden. Great to hear you're highlighting how studying STEM A-levels leaves your options so open to do exactly what you'd like to do. And of course, if you change your mind following your passions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Actually, this is funny because you showed that photo earlier of me with Michael Foale. He was a lovely guy, and I went up to him at the end after he'd done his talk, and I told him how much it meant to me that he'd taken some of my questions, and he looked at me and said, make sure you do what you love. Make sure you follow your passion. Don't do what you think other people want you to do. Don't do the thing that makes, the most sense logically. For example, I was going to go into engineering, but because I thought, well, everyone works in engineering. It's the easiest way into the space sector. Why I can't do physics. Even if I enjoy it more, I've got to do engineering. And just having that in the back of the mind all the time, that this astronaut who'd done it, who'd followed his dream, said that to me, maybe I should actually listen and take his advice. So yeah, it's definitely right, following your passions rather than following necessarily the most logical path.
Can I also point out that although I said that I changed geology to further maths, Kathy, who just did that comment, she's pretty influential in the UK space sector, and she did geology. So you can get into it from other routes. Like, although I swapped geology, you can definitely use geology to get into it. And as Emma said, you can use whatever you want to get into the sector. Like you can do whatever you want, and as long as you have an interest in it, and as Laksh said, you work on the people skills to get your way into it, you'll be able to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you, Kathy, for that. Once again, if you're tuning in on YouTube or Facebook, let us know if you have any comments or questions throughout our talk, and they will come up on our screen, and hopefully we can answer them. Well,
Sorry, I'm really sorry. I have a quick anecdote about Kathy. Kathy came to my school and did some outreach with the UK Space Agency. And I had a female physicist come to my school. She does space weather forecasting, and she was the first realization of, oh, I like space. I've always liked space. Maybe I should look more into this. And then I saw a talk with Michael Foale, who really made me interested. Then Kathy came, and that was it. Like, she came in, I think, December or January of last year. And that was the moment I decided. And she was my way in. When lockdown hit, my GCSEs got cancelled. I reached out to Kathy, and she gave me some contacts in the space sector. And I would not be here now if it was not for Kathy. I honestly, I would not. It's amazing that she's on here. So yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it.
It's great. I'm sure Kathy is smiling in her living room as she's watching Space Tour Live. Awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about all these initiatives that we've been talking about. All these initiatives that you've been doing. There's New Voices in Space, which is just getting underway. Work with the Scottish Space Leadership Council, and Aerospace for All. Kathy's just saying she's going bright red.
I mean it, Kathy. I really wouldn't be here without you. So thanks.
Bless you, Kathy. And let's not forget that you guys have been doing this whilst doing A-levels. And for kids who are tuning in, who are doing the A-levels, they're probably under a very stressful time in their careers at school.
A very uncertain time.
Yeah, also a very uncertain time, not to add, because of the current circumstances, and kids don't really know what's going on with their exams as of yet. But how did you manage to do all of this stuff that we've been talking about alongside A-levels?
You can take this, Jamie, because I had my GCSEs cancelled, so I really was in free time most of this.
Yeah, so as I said, I obviously dropped DT like just before lockdown. So for one, that helped. I was doing 4 A-levels, and then I was doing 3 before I started this. But lockdown obviously also helped because you don't have like the half an hour of going to school and the half an hour of coming back from school. Like, you save all that extra time. And we're in a lockdown again at the minute, so it's the time to start something if you want to start it, because you have got the extra time. And then towards the end of the summer holidays last year, Emma and I were like, right, we're doing this stuff. We need to work on the systems behind it whilst we've got the extra time, so that when we don't have the extra time, like we've got it nailed down and we can keep going. So over lockdown, I'd really worked on my time management in terms of like kind of scheduling out my time. Not so I was like a robot or anything, but just so I knew what I was doing when. Kind of like I had an idea of what I had to do and like prioritize what I had to do this day, roughly when and stuff. So we really used lockdown to kind of nail down our time management and our sort of like our just productivity in general. And I'm kind of a believer that you can work on being productive and stuff, but you don't want to be working all the time. Like for me, I use things like trying to be productive so that I can get all this stuff done, but still have time to chill out, because you don't want to just be doing stuff all the time, because it's just not sustainable. So it's really important to like work on these kind of things and that, but you don't want to have the attitude that you just need to be doing stuff all the time, because it's like the rest time that you have that actually really helps.
Yeah, I kind of poke fun at Jamie sometimes. What time do you wake up, Jamie?
I don't wake up really early anymore. I work best
anymore.
I work best either really early in the morning or really late at night. So for me, if I wake up at 5, I can work for like 2 hours until 7 and get like as much work done as it would take me to do like 4 hours of in the evening. Or similarly, if I stay up and I do some work at like 11 o'clock at night and work for an hour, that's probably the same as me doing like 2 hours of work in the afternoon. So I found out what sort of times of the day I work the best, and then I just do stuff then, because it means that I can do it faster. So that then I have more time to just chillax, because that's kind of, you want to do cool stuff and get the stuff done that you need to do, but also have the time to just relax.
Yeah, I'm sure it helps that your podcast is something you're passionate about.
Yeah.
This is, of course, the reason you started it, and it almost doesn't feel like work. When you're interested in something, when you're passionate about something, work doesn't necessarily feel like work, and it kind of helps you get out of bed.
Yeah, so as I said as well, Emma and I, when we started the podcast, and then we started taking Aerospace for All like a little bit further, we were like, we're going to try and make some money from this. And then we realized that wasn't possible, but we kept the stuff going because the podcast was like an opportunity to talk to cool people in space. So that's kind of what we did. And that's the attitude we took of it. And that's why we joined up with the SSLC.
That's great. We've actually got a few students in tonight. So let us know how you guys manage your time if you're a student. Hi, Ken. You're 15, doing your GCSEs. Thank you for tuning into Space Tour Live. We've got another question from M Codes. Who would be your dream guest for the podcast? All right, let's do top 3. Let's do top 3. Let's do a top 3.
Right. Yeah. Obviously, I'm like a sucker for Elon Musk right now.
Yeah, really, Jamie.
I think I love him. I would love to talk to Elon Musk, but that's like ridiculous. I'm not so much interested personally in like the astronauts and that kind of people. Like, as interesting as astronauts are, for me, it's kind of the people that make the things work behind the scenes. So I really want to talk to kind of like the people that are just going behind the scenes. And there's people that I don't even know of yet that I know I want to talk to. Like, I'll get introduced to somebody and then I'll be like, that's my dream person to talk to. But it's not somebody that's necessarily like a celebrity or anything, or like a well-known person. But when I talk to them, I realize actually that's really cool what you're doing and you've made this thing work, but nobody knows about you. Yeah. That's the kind of people that I'm interested in talking to.
I mean, yeah, on that note, that I met someone who her job is to train astronauts, and I didn't even know that was a kind of a job. It's weird, you don't think about the people behind the scenes who are the ones teaching them how to use the toilet, but that is one of her jobs. And she was amazing, and I'm sure I'd love to have her on the New Voices podcast at some point. People I don't know that I'd love to have on, oh gosh, unlike Jamie, I quite like astronauts. So Mike Massimeo, I'd love to have a chat with. There's actually Mark Kelly, who's just become a senator in Arizona, a Democratic senator, I might add. I think he would be quite interesting to talk to, because while he shows that you can do lots of different things within the space sector. You don't just have to go and be an engineer or an astronaut. You can go into politics and policy. So having a conversation about the importance of sort of how foreign relations relate with space would be quite interesting, because, as I say, quite interested in politics as well as general space stuff.
Yeah. I was speaking to somebody the other week who's working on applications of blockchain to space. And for me, that's really interesting because sort of the areas that I'm looking at are, as I said, AI, and then blockchain is obviously becoming more and more relevant. And when I got the opportunity to talk to somebody that's using that in space, like that was really cool, because it's kind of the technology that I'm interested in. Like anybody who's working with that stuff is cool to talk to, because they're kind of doing the stuff that I want to be doing. But it doesn't really matter who they are. It's just kind of what they're doing. And then you speak to them and you think, oh, they're doing cool stuff. And then you get to know them as a person.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like the personality comes afterwards. And when you're connecting with people, that is really important. Like making friendships with people that you speak to. And yeah, you might reach out to somebody on LinkedIn initially and send emails, but once you've spoken to them, the best way to do it is just send them a WhatsApp message or something. Because it's way more casual, and as much as there's like professional networking and stuff, if you can be friends with somebody that is like cool to you, it's just way more interesting.
Have a mentor in the space sector, but a friend. Jamie's right.
Just to add to that, what were most of the people you were reaching out to, were they generally like accepting of the fact that you guys are reaching out?
Usually.
Or how was the reaction?
I've yet to be turned down by someone. I've had a couple of people not reply to emails, but nobody has said no. Yeah,
nobody said no. There's a few people that I've spoken to that maybe have views that aren't the same as mine, and maybe kind of don't necessarily think that young people should be putting themselves out there as much in the sector, but they're still happy to talk to me. Nobody said no. And to be honest, when you have a conversation with somebody that doesn't agree with you, it's normally more interesting anyway. So yeah, it's just nobody has said no.
I mean, I've had maybe one slightly negative experience with someone on a conversation. He was helping me he was trying to show me how to build a good CV or good LinkedIn profile, and showed me loads of photos of quite attractive women on LinkedIn, and was like, this is what your photo should look like. I felt a bit awkward just sort of sitting there going, yeah, I'm sure it's what it should look like, but it's not going to. But that's the only sort of odd experience I've had doing this. It's been great apart from that.
Well, I think earlier we were briefly speaking about the kind of perspective young people have of the space industry. And Emma, you mentioned the cliche of it's not just run by old white men anymore.
Yeah.
Where does that image come from? And why do people get that still?
So this is something I'm quite interested in researching and talking about, because it starts when we were a lot younger. I used to watch Mythbusters show on Discovery. Of that, there were 5 hosts. 4 of them were guys, and one of them was a woman. And I remember being very disappointed when she wasn't on, because she was on maternity leave. And I didn't realize that at the time. I didn't realize why I was sad that she wasn't on there. But as I've got older, I've realized, it was because I could see someone like me on screen. And recently, Granty Mahara died. He was another one of the members of the Mythbusters team, and he was Asian. And seeing the outpouring of sort of people commenting, saying it was amazing seeing someone like me on screen when I was younger, or in their 20s at uni. It's just so important to see that diversity in the news and in the media. I know people, so there was a NASA scientist I spoke to who said that she used to watch Star Trek, and seeing the diversity on Star Trek even gave her the sort of confidence that she could fit in somewhere. But the problem is, there is still so much of the white male domination in the media. It's changing slowly, but not fast enough, really. That's part of what New Voices is trying to change.
Yeah.
To be fair, some people are doing it spot on. Like SpaceX, they seem to be really good at kind of getting that diversity, representing diverse people. But I think the space sector, as Emma said, is a place that everyone can get into. And in the past, it's kind of been like, I don't know, like 50 years ago, when a lot of the people that are kind of at the top now were getting into it. I would imagine that the kind of things that you would need to do to get into space would be kind of things that men would normally have done, like sort of that back in that time. Like, obviously it's not the right thing, but that's kind of what happened. And quite a lot of those sort of people are recognizing of that. Like the guy who set up the SSLC quite commonly says a quote, male, pale and stale, and he describes himself as that. and it's kind of like we need to change this. But yeah, I think it is going to change because people who have influence are recognizing that, and then people like us are trying to change that.
Yeah, it's not that people now don't want to change it. It's just the process is like starting to happen. It takes time for these things to kick in. So yeah, hopefully, if you ask children and sort of now even is what's the space sector look like, they will see someone like them.
Yeah, that's great. I think exactly as you said, what New Voices is doing is amazing, and it will take time for these initiatives to take place and for them to get up and running. But slowly but surely, we'll see a change in the old cliches. And Kian, I hope I'm saying that right, Kian. She says she would like to study in the space sector as well, and maybe material physics. Also other space traveling stuff. What advice would you have for Kian?
It's probably more kind of
yeah. So Jamie's more interested in computer science, but I share your passion for exploration, Kian. So I don't know. The advice I'd have for you is don't force yourself into doing something you don't necessarily want to do just because you think it's easier. Like I say, I wanted to do engineering because I thought to become someone who works with exploration, I have to be an engineer. You don't. There are so many more routes into it. And honestly, if you want to, I'll happily talk with you about them and give you some advice. If you stay around at the end, go onto the Aerospace for a website and you'll see my email on the About You page. And I'd happily chat with you about it. Also, Kathy, that's really great that it's really good for women. That's yay.
Yeah. Kathy just sent in a note that they're about the UK. I believe it's the UK Space Agency about to publish a census of the UK space sector, and no other country has done this. And that stats for women in the industry are looking quite positive. So that's good news.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we like to see. Also, so it's amazing that you're doing this and you're 15. Like, this is well done. It's brilliant. Yeah.
I guess that note from Kathy kind of gives me the chance to plug in another initiative on Space Store Live is our Accessing Space series. And we had our very first episode back in December, which was Black Lives in Space. And we spoke to a bunch of really influential people in space. And we're going to be having another one, our second episode, coming up in a couple of months' time. And we're going to be talking about women in space. So really looking forward to that episode of Accessing Space. So make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can hear all about it when it comes out. Awesome. Well, if we can put the slides back up really quickly, I really want to talk about Jamie's other initiatives that he's also been getting up to. So what is this all about?
Right. So this is because I'm interested in like the computer science route. I actually started putting my stuff out on social media back in October time, and I got involved in a couple of people. We did a hackathon in November. This is me trying to learn web development, and basically I was in this hackathon with these two guys, one from Norway and one other from England, who were both a year or so older than me, and I was by far the worst person on there. So we had 24 hours to make a expense tracker app. So I did the stuff that you can see pretty much because that's the easy stuff. And then, they did the behind the scenes stuff. But I'm really interested at the minute in combining sort of the world for me of AI and space, and finding out how AI can be applied to space, which obviously there are loads of applications of AI to space, but trying to make people see the connection even more clearly. So that's just something else that I've been up to, is kind of putting my stuff out there in terms of what I'm doing with code as well.
Great, that's great. Awesome. I think Kathy's just mentioning about the SPIN alumni, and it's something I should mention now. And the fact that I actually got involved in the space industry through the UKSA SPINternship program. And this was after I finished my third year in aerospace. I was literally just looking online for summer jobs in the space sector. Initially my search began, and I was just like, I just want to do something engineering related, because a lot of my friends from different universities and my university I was at, it was just so hard to find engineering related summer placements, because companies are just not, loads of companies are not willing to take on many students over the summer. And I was just looking around, and I think it was spacejobs.co.uk or something, where there was a link to the UK Spinternship program. And then that led me on to a whole load of there was 30 or 40 different companies that was in the space sector, and they were specifically advertising for graduates and students who have just graduated or looking for a summer placement. So if you're interested in the space sector, or the space industry, or you have a passion for space, go check out the UKSA Spinternship programs. And there's so many opportunities for different types of internships. You don't have to be doing maths and physics and fad maths. You can be doing different subjects, and there's still going to be an opportunity you can apply for and get some experience in space. Awesome. Well, I know we've only got about 15 minutes left. It's flown by. Let's speak about let's speak about your perspective on what you think the space industry is doing right now, and where do you think it's heading in terms of how it's communicating and marketing specifically to young people.
Right. Yeah, this is something that I care quite a lot about. And yeah, I think the space sector in particular, SpaceX does it really well, and you guys, the Space Store, do it really well. Like you reach out to young people, you put things on like this, which are engaging for young people and are on platforms that young people see. So the issue that I find is that a lot of the rest of the space sector targets platforms like LinkedIn and Twitter. And something that I think is that what 15-year-old person is on LinkedIn really? Like, I got on LinkedIn because one of my mates convinced me to, and yeah, it was a good idea. You should get on it, but unless you've been told that, you wouldn't be on there. And most people of my NM's age don't really use Twitter. But what space companies do you see on Instagram or on TikTok? Like, that's where young people are. So we should be representing ourselves there. And I think the messaging needs to be changed that is shown to young people, and that's what we're obviously trying to do, and that's what you guys are doing. But yeah, I think we can't expect young people to be finding out about the space sector, finding out about opportunities, talking to people, and trying to get into it if they're not even aware that it exists, really.
I think one of my hobbies is I run a political comedy group, and the best example I've got of which age groups use which platform or who's engaging with us. So our target audience is college students and teenagers. We were on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We were getting maybe like 10 to 20 likes on Facebook and Twitter. Instagram, 40 to 50. We just joined TikTok and we're already in the thousands. So it's clear where these groups are. Companies just need to be on those platforms, and that's if they want to make an impact, which they do. That's why no one's turning Jamie and I down, because these people do care. It's just they don't necessarily always know how to make this impact. So having conversations is important.
I think a lot of the kind of people that are in the positions where they should be doing this sort of stuff are older, as we were talking about earlier, and they don't know what we need, what we be doing. So for them, Twitter is the right place, but it's just not for people in their teens or in their early 20s maybe. So until you speak to those people and until you find out where they're going, you're not going to reach them. You're not going to reach them by just doing what you think is right, because it's probably not.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because when Jamie and I were still focused on aerospace for all, we had conversations about what do we do when we're in our 20s, and this is targeted at A-level students. So do we pass it on? We should pass it on, because these people now know what life is like at school. There's always the cliche of, oh, my A-levels were far harder when I was back at school. It's what my dad always says to me. It's like, well, you don't know because you're not there now. And the same is true of anything in life. You don't know what it is like for young people if you're no longer young. You can't blame them.
I just think we need basically a platform for young people to have their voices heard. And once that happens, then we'll start to see progress in terms of getting young people into the sector. But it's like, if you for one don't know that the sector exists, like the UK sector is pretty quiet. Like you don't really hear about it that much. You hear about SpaceX and you hear about NASA, and when you talk to somebody that doesn't know about space, they say NASA. They don't say what's going on in Harwell where you guys are, or they don't say what's going on like just somewhere else. Like a lot of people don't even know about the Cornwall spaceport. So there's a lot of stuff going on, but the publicity just isn't there. And I think we actually just need to get the message out to as many people as possible, whether that's even on kids' TV shows or on radio, like that kind of stuff, which you guys did the other day actually. But like as we keep doing that more and more kind of that stuff, eventually people will hear about it, and the platforms that young people are using will become space related. But we need to make them aware that it exists first, and then let them do what they want with it. And the best way to do that would be if big companies got on these platforms. Like if Reaction Engines got on Instagram and took it seriously, like they will have somebody that does their marketing for Twitter and stuff. Somebody will be running their Twitter. But if they got on Instagram and took it as seriously as they took Twitter, then you would have way more young people finding out about it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you mentioned that, Kathy, because that was something I was thinking about. When you get these rovers launching and landing, when you see astronauts going up to the International Space Station, there is a huge buzz around it, and there is a lot of media interest, and it promotes the space sector, and it's amazing. But we don't often see that in the UK, and it's frustrating because I remember when Tim Peake launched, sitting in my classroom with my school friends watching, and everyone being very excited. And I wish we had more of that, but there isn't the same kind of buzz yet at the moment around things like satellite launches. So the question is, how do we make that buzz in the UK? How do we make that happen?
I think one thing which will generate that is, as we've got the spaceports in the UK, as they start to operate, then we've got somewhere where things will be being launched from. So Spaceport Cornwall, if and when something happens from there, when Virgin puts something up, that will be a tourist attraction, and you will get that kind of stuff happening. But it's all happening in America or Russia pretty much right now. The big stuff is happening. There's small stuff happening here, like definitely it's happening all the time. But when the public becomes more aware of it, then it'll just all change.
Yeah, you're right, Kathy. Yeah, it does depend on British input. Yeah. Who knows? Well, when Tim Peake goes back up, fingers crossed, there'll be a lot more people our age interested.
Right.
Well, I think one question, as you said, companies need to be doing more and coming onto these social media platforms. And I remember, Jamie, I think you posted this on your LinkedIn a couple of days ago, about how big space companies need to be using platforms that young people are on in order to help engage them within the industry and inspire them to take on professions that they want them to take on. But the question is, like, hang on, what do they post about? What kind of content do they promote on the social media channels that they're not really that comfortable on in the first place?
Well, I mean, I guess there's two questions there. There's what kind of content should they be doing, and why aren't they doing that already? So I suppose you've got to look at it as it has to be looked at by the companies as an investment, because they're going to have to pay pretty much people to do this full time. Because if you want to make something proper happen with it, it's not something you can do just like for a couple of hours every week. But I think the kind of content that I personally would find really interesting is if you saw a big company that was designing or manufacturing something that was going to go into space, or that was like writing like software that was going to be used in space. If you kind of saw like the behind the scenes of that, and there's always been TV shows. Like, do you remember the TV show? I can't remember what it was called, but they would show you how like a tin can was made in a factory.
How it's made.
How it's made. Imagine if like companies did that for space. Like it's kind of cliche, like how a satellite is made, But if they did that, that would be interesting and people would tune into that. Or they could just be like, they could do employee interviews or something and say, like, imagine on an Instagram story, you just have like a different employee does a takeover each day or like one a week or something. You just get the viewpoints from different people. And it's just the awareness that comes from that. So there's so much scope for it. And once they start trying it out, they'll work out what works. But because nobody's done it yet, there isn't really a way to know what to do.
NASA's a brilliant example of this, and ESA, to be fair, because, and the UK Space Agency, because they don't just necessarily post about what they're doing. Sometimes you can put in posts about this star and give some information. You know, companies, if they just join these platforms and post anything related to space, it'll start picking up. You know, it doesn't, you don't necessarily have to know everything about how to increase audience retention and how to get a specific target, like target market. You just need to try, which is what Jamie and I did, you know, with our podcast. We just had a go at it and see what happened. So yeah, just try.
Yeah, so I guess companies just need to try it out and see what happens, and then it will lead. I hope it leads to some kind of engagement and some kind of uptake, and the numbers of students interested in space increase. A question from Kyan actually is, what books, podcasts, and educational information about space would you guys recommend?
Emma, do you want to go for the books? I know you like some space books.
Yeah, so the first one you've got to start with, and I mean you have to, is The Martian. That's my number one. Jamie and I, we both love this, and if you don't want to read the book, watch the film. It's brilliant. In fact, I wrote to Andy Weir to tell him how great it was, and amazingly he wrote back. Very lovely guy. So yeah, number one, The Martian. If you're interested in astronauts, Chris Hadfield has a brilliant book. He's a Canadian astronaut, and it talks about sort of understanding that you have an end goal. Like his end goal was always to become an astronaut, but along the way, if you don't enjoy every step towards that goal, you shouldn't be doing it. You know, you don't want to have a really unobtainable, because it is an unobtainable goal, becoming an astronaut. You don't want to miss it and realize you've been unhappy. So just follow your heart rather than your head all the time. That's a top, those two, and then maybe one more that's more sciencey. I mean, you've got The Theory of Everything, which is a physics book that everyone recommends, and I highly recommend too, because it is a good book. Stephen Hawking is a great science communicator. Those kind of top three introductions to space and science.
Before I say mine, Skyrora are doing a good job at this as well. Somebody just said they're doing a good job at the whole social media. So companies should just look at what they're doing and then do it themselves. And like what other people, just copy other people, like copy the space store. Like
that's what we did. I think
what you're doing, but you guys have done it first. So if other companies just take an idea of like, they do something like this, they could just do an Instagram live with one of their employees talking about what they did this week. Then that would get engagement. But yeah, my book and podcast recommendations. I was bought the book, The Space Race. I think it was made by, I don't even know who wrote it. But I'll find out. And that was quite a good book. It's kind of intense. It's obviously just talks through the space race. And I read that before I was interested in space, because I got bought as a gift by somebody, and I was like, this is a cool book, but I didn't find it that good. And then I read it again, like the other month, and I was like, this is actually a really cool book.
Good book.
And then in terms of podcasts, we got to plug the Aerospace for All podcast. There are
and the new voices,
that you can listen to. Another good podcast is the Interplanetary Podcast. You guys have worked with those guys, haven't you? So that's a good podcast that I listen to, the Interplanetary Podcast. The New Voices in Space podcast will be good. We've got
fingers crossed.
And then, those are kind of the podcasts. There's a few others that you kind of just type space podcasts in, and there are good ones going. The SEDS podcast is good. I think it's called SEDScast. That's the Students for Exploration of Space.
Development of Space.
They have their own podcast, which is good. There's loads of them going where people just get on and talk about cool stuff in space. And some of them do way better than others. And some of them are way better produced. But what it can do is you can just listen to somebody doing an interview, with somebody in space, and it just gives you insights. So any space podcast is really going to be good.
If you're not sure about space, which is perfectly okay, like it's okay to think space is cool, but also you have an interest in, I don't know, researching marine biology. There's a podcast called The Monkey Cage, which is hosted by Brian Cox, and it's really great because there's such a variety of different scientists that go on there, and usually they have someone who isn't necessarily a scientist. So one of them, they had Mark Gatiss on, who plays Mycroft in Sherlock, and having the perspective of someone who doesn't know science, talking with these people, gets the conversation flowing a bit better than someone sort of maybe sitting, 5 scientists in a room speaking in what sounds like code, because they're using all these shortened vocabulary and things. So yeah, The Monkey Cage.
Yeah, I think all of those recommendations are great for any young people who are interested in space. The other thing I'd add is if you're new here on Space Tour Live, you would not have heard of our fortnightly space roundup we do every other Tuesday with space experts and astronomers Nick Howes and Terry Mosley. Now we have this show every Tuesday at 7:30, every other Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. And what we're now doing is launching that as a podcast. So hopefully that should be coming really, really soon on across like podcast channels. So tune into that. I think that's super, super fun to listen to, just to kind of stay on top of space news in general. If you're interested in like articles, by all means go to like space.com. They do some amazing stuff. But I think what Nick and Terry do every other Tuesday is amazing, because they just because I mean they've been in the industry for 20-30 years each, and they're like such enthusiastic astronomers, and the way they talk about space, I think they can inspire anyone. So that'll be coming soon on Space Store, back through Space Store. So tune into that. And what else do you think? Just so I know we're almost time now, but what else do you think? Oh, we've actually gone over time, but we'll finish off with what. I know we mentioned young people, especially students doing their A-levels or GCSEs, they could be just tuning into these podcasts, they could be reading some books. What else do you think they could do to get involved?
Then I say the number one thing is talk to people. Reach out to, if you don't know anyone, I didn't know anyone in the space sector really. And if Kathy hadn't have come to talk at my school, I would have still reached out, been in a slightly different way. So the best thing here, sorry, I'm fumbling my words. If you send an email to Airbus, genuinely go on like the contact us page of the big companies and say, I'd love to talk to some of your employees, and they will find someone. And then just have a conversation, and that person will know someone else, and they will know someone else, and you will begin to learn more about the space sector than you could ever get from a book or an article. You hear stories that will never be written down for security reasons, but also, ones that just there are people you speak to who wouldn't write these articles, and unless you talk, you won't ever know. So talk to people.
Yeah, I would say the same. The Space Store is on like social media. You reach out to them and they can connect you to people. Reach out to Emma or me. Like, we know other people in the space sector that if you want to talk to somebody, we probably know somebody who knows that person.
Yeah.
So like I talk to anybody that contacts me. The Space Store guys like Laksh, I'm sure if anybody's reached out to you, you would help them out.
Definitely.
Like it's just talking to people that you find approachable. Like, once you meet one person, they can kind of just introduce you to as many people as you want. And then, it just goes from there.
Great. Yeah, definitely reach out to us. I know since April, we've been doing these Thursday night talks. I've spoken to so many people, and people who I didn't even think in terms of their profession would be part of the space industry. So we formed so many amazing connections. And through that connection is what drove the fortnightly roundup we do every other Tuesday. Nick and Terry came on board and started this amazing new space news roundup, which was amazing. And that all just came through kind of reaching out to people and asking them to come on and just speak about what they do every Thursday night. So yeah, reach out to us if you're a young person interested in space, and we can connect you to a company that you might be finding it difficult to get in touch with. And I think we're almost towards the end of our talk, unfortunately. Just any final questions from the audience? Let us know if you have any questions. Thank you, Ground-Based Space. You said you're a big advocate of the UK space industry, and we should eventually have more videos highlighting different organizations of what they're doing. And hopefully, in terms of the video production side, companies are, I know, especially at Harwell, are working harder to promote what they do and trying to get that media content out there, because of course everyone engages through media content best. So they are doing that. Let us know if you have any questions. We're almost about to wrap it up on Space Still Live.
In answer to Kathy's question, I haven't spoken to any of them, but now I really want to. Yes. There's so many people out there that, the space community, it's like a bubble. Once you get punctured into it, you can talk to anyone, anywhere, be they, in Australia, America, or just down the road, but you didn't know they were involved in space.
Yeah, but learn how to do time zones, because Emma isn't very good at that.
Hey. I've only made a mistake maybe twice. Sorry, in America, there's 3 time zones, and I always forget that there's 6-hour ones, not 5 and 8 hour. In my defense, thanks, Jamie.
Yeah, no, I got it. Well, don't worry. But yeah, time zones are an interesting one when you're first doing it. But yeah, just talk to people and set up a call on Zoom, because people will take you seriously if you ask them interesting questions.
Yeah.
And like, just because you're like 17, like myself and Emma, I think is 17 now.
Just 16. 16.
No, okay. And Kian's 15. Like, if you reach out to people and show enthusiasm, they will take you seriously.
Yeah. Passion is the most important thing, not necessarily smarts. Being passionate. Yeah. All right.
Great. Well, I think we'll wrap it up. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you guys. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I thank you for everyone who's tuned in on YouTube and Facebook. It's been great having such an engaging audience. Thank you, Kyan, for all of your comments. Thank you, Kathy, Ground-Based Space, and everybody else who commented and engaged with us during the talk. Have a great evening. Thank you for tuning in. Let's hope once again that we're out of lockdown number 3, so we can have these talks in person eventually. And yeah, thank you, Emma. Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks for having us.
Space Stuff.
Yeah, it's been really great. Really
again, Kian, if any of you want to reach out, our emails are found on Aerospace for All's website, so do feel free.
Yeah, or social media, whatever you want.
Awesome. Thank you for tuning into Space Live. We've had Emma, Holling, and Jamie Robb with us tonight. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Have a great evening, and we'll catch you next Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. for the Space Roundup with Nick Howes and Terry Mosley. Take care, guys. Have a good one.
Goodbye.